Okay, we're good.
Greetings. So happy you're joining us for Creating Zola Mondays. We're here on behalf of the ABPSI, the Association of Black Psychologists, to bring you some Zola, some love, which will ignite that healing energy. And boy, do we need that now. Ugh, can you believe we're in a war? That the president can't explain what we're doing there or what the objective. Oh, let me not get off on that. Let me focus on Zola, which is the perfect topic for us because we have back again with us Professor Wayne Chandler, who's going to be our special guest today, as well as our lovely panelist. And I always forget to say who I am. I'm Linda James Myers. I'm a past president of ABSI, as well as Elder of Elders Emerita and many other positions. But mostly I'm someone really committed to the liberation of Black people, the African mind, and illuminating this soul. So why don't we have our other elder introduce himself, and then lastly we'll have Professor Chandler share who he is again.
She must mean me because I'm the oldest one here. My name is Harvey Linder. I'm a clinical psychologist. I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I've been involved in ABPSI for quite some time. I forget how many years, off and on. And I've had a number of roles within ABPSI, including Midwest Regional Coordinator, and I'm now a member of the Ethics Committee. And I'm also, along with one of my colleagues, co-founder of the Minnesota chapter of ABPSI. Coming to you from Minnesota, which is now famous.
Yes.
Jojo, you go next.
Also, I'm Dr. Jonisha Hickson. I am a school psychologist in Washington, D.C., and also the current chair of the D.C. ABPSI, as well as the National ABPSI Public Relations. Super excited for this conversation, especially after our last one. It was provocative. So I'm excited. And welcome back, Professor Chandler. William?
Yeah, my name is William Parham, and I am the crisis chair for Southbone and Healing Circles through ABPSI. I'm also a healer, work with kids, and a general agitator of oppressive systems. And I'm coming off of the excitement that was had at Fisk University over this weekend, uh, where we got to talk about liberation psychology.
Well, that's certainly what we're about here. And so, with that in mind, we are honored to have again Professor Chandler, who's going to share some of his knowledge, wisdom, and understanding with us, so we can end this session with a liberated mind. So, Professor Chandler, please introduce yourself.
Yes. As I had stated earlier, I guess the first program that we did, I wear a lot of hats, invested in a lot of different pathways that I'm hoping will all kind of lead to one particular source. Um, but I worked with Dr. Ivan Van Sertima for about 10 years, wrote for him, um, was on the lecture circuit pretty heavily during that period of time. And I'm really into the practicality of how we can manifest change in ways that I feel are overlooked and in some ways just outwardly abandoned. And a lot of that comes through, just what we do internally. The only way out is in, and
Yes.
that's my perception, of what we need to do and how we need to approach authentic transformation and change. It has to begin with us internally, which takes us into a totally different reality with respect to mind body relationships. And then projecting, that self cultivation and self levels of personal power out into the world to create authentic change and transformation.
Mhm.
Um, I'm interested in the whole dynamics of how money flows, in and throughout the world. Uh, so that's always been, um, somewhat of an abstraction, for many. But for me, my mother was a coin collector, and so I think she kind of passed that interest on to me. And so I've been a collector in the areas of precious metals and things related directly or indirectly uh, to acquiring those. Um, and I do retreats. My focus is on healing retreats, and I am a healer. I'm very profoundly invested in a system of alternative medicine, which works with frequency to create changes in the body mind.
Mhm.
You know, so yeah, I'll do a lot of hats. Let me take some of these hats off.
Well, we're so glad you're here with us today to wear whatever hat you desire. I know last week we had a very exciting and interesting conversation, and a few things came up that we wanted to continue. And one had to do with um, practices people could use, things people could do for their healing. We also left talking about, or I think we mentioned the return of the divine Black feminine. I know you do a lot of work in that arena. So, wherever you would like to start. Uh,
Sure. Just maybe to create a certain level of focus, we can start with actually doing a particular practice that will kind of like lock everybody in and create a, kind of like an integration, of awareness that is moving throughout the entire, listening community.
Excellent.
So, for me, the most important thing is, of course, breathing properly. It always begins, it always starts with the breath. And I connect the whole breathing dynamic, with what's called Kachari Mudra. And Kachari Mudra is tongue connection. And it's the science of properly placing the tongue along the ridge that runs along the roof of the mouth so that you connect these channels that move up the back and down the front of the human body. Once these connections are made, then you have this flow of life force energy that moves consistently through the human body and has an impact on the entire body mind. So, Kachari Mudra is one of the best kept secrets, um, because, and I'll say best kept because most of your so called, like next level practices like Tai Chi, yoga, they don't teach it. And they don't teach it because they feel very, I guess you could say, torn with respect to how people in the West will use this kind of power. And because of that, they've refrained from really teaching it in these various practices and disciplines. So Kachari Mudra I utilize consistently with an array of the various practices that I do. So first, again, is just learning how to breathe because we don't breathe properly. You know, most of us do upper chest breathing, which really creates a condition, you know, for pulmonary, you know, deterioration. You know, so you're looking at emphysema, you're looking at asthma, you know, all of your COPD, you know, issues, because the mid portion of our lungs, the lower portion of our lungs are never being worked. So they literally, you know, just kind of wither away because they're not being, you know, brought into just the whole dynamic of proper respiration. You know, so what I'd like to do is to teach people how to breathe using the entire lung. So the first thing I want everyone to do is take the very tip of their tongue and place it on the ridge that runs along the roof of the mouth. Now, we're not going to get into this now, but there are 3 points that run along this ridge. Each point corresponds to a different system in the human body. So the first point is wind. The second point is fire point, which connects to the systems of the heart. And the third point is the water point, which is probably the most dominant of the systems because, you know, we're water, you know, like 80%, 75% of our body mind, you know, is comprised of that element, you know. So, but placing the tongue, the very tip of the tongue on this ridge is going to create the movement of this energy.
So
So
for
now I want you to focus on your abdomen and on the lower abdomen around the area of the navel. And I want everyone to just breathe into that section of their body. I want you to feel on the inhalation, the area around the navel expand. On the exhalation, contract. And just relax the mind, relax the body, allow this breathing technique to be employed and to remember that this is the way we were breathing naturally when we were born. And we get out of this method of breathing because of the various ways we operate in the culture. So just focusing on the area around the navel, inhale and exhale. This is actually filling the lower portion of the lung. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. Now I want you to bring your awareness to the next level, which is the area that's mid body around the ribs. So you want to focus in on this particular area of the body. And this particular area, when we inhale into this area, we're now filling the midsection of the lung. So now we're working with the lower portion of the lung and the midsection of the lung. So you can actually, as you bring on the inhalation, your next inhalation, as you bring the breath into the lower portion and then inhale it up into the midsection of the lung, you can actually just kind of expand the ribs slightly. Just kind of move the ribs out to the side of the body, just to get an over exaggerated sense of what it feels like to bring the breath into that particular area. So now you're inhaling in the expansion of the navel. That process of inhalation continues now up into the area around the ribs. So you're now filling the lower portion of the lung and the mid portion of the lung. So let's keep it here for a second. Let's inhale, expand, and exhale. Inhale, and exhale. Keeping the tip of the tongue on the ridge running along the roof of the mouth. Inhale, exhale. Keeping the breath fluid, comfortable. If you see areas where you're forcing this action to take place, focus on that area and remove the stress and the tension that's being brought into or that is accumulating in that area. You want your breathing to be fluid and easy. Inhale, and exhale. Again, inhale, filling the lower and the midsection. And exhale. Now we want to focus. Continue your breathing, lower lung, mid lung, but focus now on the upper part of the lung, the upper part of the chest, because this is the next area we're going to move the breath into. Once we move into this particular area, lower, mid, and upper, we are filling the entire chest cavity, engaging the lung in the process it was designed to complete. Lower, middle, and upper. You're now getting 7 times the amount of oxygen into your system. This increases immunity, it increases vitality, it allows proper oxygenation so that no virus can live in a well oxygenated system. So you want to start with the expansion in the lower area of the abdomen, bringing it up into the midsection around the ribs, and then bringing it up, elevating into the upper portion of the chest cavity to make sure you're getting the breath all the way up into the upper portion of the lung. You can raise the shoulders very subtly on the inhalation, inhaling from the navel area, ribs, lift the shoulders slightly, taking it all the way up into the upper portion of the lung. You're now filling the entire lung with your breath. Let's stay here for a few breaths. Inhaling from the lower portion of the abdomen, bringing it up into the midsection of the body around the ribs. From the midsection, inhaling up into the upper portion of the lung, the upper portion of the chest. And feel that expansiveness that's taking place. And relax. So what we'll do on our next program, our next podcast, what we'll do is using this as a base, we'll spin off into another breathing technique, which is designed to balance and integrate the right and left hemispheres of the brain. Any questions? How did that feel?
Gratitude.
Yes. I always feel so like I feel like I go to another dimension when I meditate and I have to like capture myself. Like right now, I knew we was on a webinar, but when I meditate, I often like fall asleep, which I know is a good thing, right? Because that means I'm reaching that sense of nirvana that I'm chasing. And I think right now at this age, I'm learning how to still learning how to temper or how to pace myself and be slow to respond to things that might usually get, an intense reaction out of me. And coming back to my breathing exercises and meditation and things like that have been such a good tool for that, right? We underestimate the usefulness of that basic like tool of life that we have. So thank you for that practice and that reminder to pause and sit with self.
Yeah, awesome. My pleasure. I mean, just utilizing tongue connection is the be all end all. I mean, because somebody can throw like negative energy at you and will elicit a response that will be in sync with what they're throwing at you. But when you connect the tongue, it stops everything and it creates this flow, this fluidity of energy that allows you to center yourself and focus and instantaneously bring in the proper response to that person who's throwing out that energy so that you don't give them what they're giving you.
Mm.
Of course, that's going to drive them even more crazy, but
Yeah. I was going to mention briefly. Sorry. Also, the theme. I think this we talked about this about 2 weeks ago, Nana Linda, when we met on Wednesday evening, and I just keep getting repeated messages from ancestors, from the universe and things like that about the power of the tongue. Like the tongue is so powerful. I think after we had our first session, you were like, yeah, you can create the universe you want. You can create the experiences you want, that if you just call it to you and say it. And I've been like experimenting and it's been working. I'm like, I want this, I need this, I want this. And I'm like hard pressed to find that I receive what I need. So I'm like, yeah, more of that, more speaking nicely to myself and to the universe and to
you
my
should
ancestors.
come on a retreat in April.
Do I have retreat money? How much? Nah. How much
Yeah,
is
in Jamaica, you know.
Oh, I love Jamaica. That's where my family
Mm.
heritage is from. I'm actually going to Belize in April though. So, but can you send us the information for other members who might be interested in
Yeah,
joining?
yeah,
I do have free time. I can go. I love Jamaica. That's a perfect place for a retreat.
yeah. We'll be in Mobay.
I'm very grateful that you're bringing this technology to folks, and I'm grateful for the packaging that it's coming in, because I think that there are practitioners out there that present this information to folks, but they don't look like us, and I think that that is so important for this messaging, this technology to be received by our people, especially when we have bombs that are going off in countries in solidarity right now in our name. And so I'm grateful that you are inviting us to connect to the total power of our breath, um, and to also connecting to teachings like the tongue at the ridge of the ridge of your mouth. Um, I was curious. You were speaking earlier about healing frequencies, and so I don't know folks' experience with healing frequencies at home, but I would love if you could talk about healing frequencies. And I'm also curious if you incorporate those healing frequencies with these breathing exercises that you just had us walk through.
I do. Like my focus, like for this conference that I'm doing in London, my focus is it's going to be multifaceted, but the essence of it is going to be the relationship between melanin and the microbiome, because those are two, you know, uh, bioresonant technologies that operate in the body and actually feed off of, respond off of one another to create a certain level of frequency that is consistently being projected out into the environment. And it has its magnetic pull, and it also has its electro pull as well. And so a lot of times when you do certain types of practices that are about self alignment, using um, tone, music, specific types of pattern frequencies that are, designed, to, alter consciousness, expand consciousness, activate certain areas in the body. Like, for example, people talk about the uh, the pineal, or the pineal, uh, you know. I look at a lot of the conversation around that, and fascinating to me because one of the things they'll say, well, if you take in too much of this particular element or that particular element, it will corrode and really dismantle, the functionality of this particular gland. But the one thing that creates more extreme imbalance in that gland are emotional fields.
Mhm.
All the emotional fields, because surrounding that gland is the limbic brain or the limbic center, and it absorbs and encodes emotional frequencies. So if you're dealing with the absorption of low base emotional frequencies all of the time, which is what we do,
Mhm.
that in itself, shuts down that gland.
Mhm.
And so you look at the things that you can begin to utilize based on frequency, which will remove a lot of the congestive low base emotional frequencies that collect in that area, that will allow the pineal to really do what it's designed to do with the release, of anandamide and other types of compounds, DMT, other types of mind expanding, assets that we have that we never use.
So, Professor Chandler, can you give the listeners some sense of what they might expect, based on your prior experience with people who go down this route and begin to practice these things? What can our listeners expect um, to encounter as they move toward this kind of experience, this kind of change?
Yeah, you're going to encounter whatever you once you activate certain systems in the body in terms of energy flow. That energy flow moves, it's a total mind body experience. So it moves into all the areas now that have been deficient,
Mhm.
in terms of maintaining, carrying, expressing that level of vibration. And
Mhm.
so then it becomes a matter of how do you apply intention to
Mhm.
what it is you want to create out in the world. Because now you have this awareness, okay, I know energy is moving now into these various areas of my mind body. What do
Mhm.
I want to do with that energy? And that's where the application of intention comes in, and you're able to take that focus and say, this is what I want to create
Mhm.
with this newfound energy that is now a part of my whole operating dynamic.
And can you give some examples of how those kinds of intentions have manifested for others who've tried this?
Oh, yeah. One of the things like on retreat,
Mhm.
I talk about various levels of abundance, but you want to have, again, the only way out is in.
Mhm.
So I really talk about, different levels of attracting abundance through magnetism.
Mhm.
And that magnetic quality, has to come through intentional awareness that the organs, the major organs in your body are feminine organs. And therefore, that locks them in automatically to the field of magnetism.
Mhm.
So you have a magnetic quality that is operational full on 24/7. And it's just your lack of intention and direction for that magnetism that keeps us in these places of lack,
Mhm.
whether it's spiritual lack, whether it's lack of vitality,
Mhm.
whether it's lack of financial abundance.
Mhm.
It's this ongoing lack that you now have an insight, a more deeper insight into having, caring, creating in your being
Mhm.
that you can now, you know, apply.
Are
And
there ways?
so, one of the things, like in my classes, um, programs that I teach, like I have a class, The Alchemy of Inner Empowerment,
Mhm.
where I show and teach, how to like open one's self up in attracting these different dynamics into your life. And so, for us, money is a big thing. We don't we have a horrific relationship, with financial abundance.
Well, I would think it would be possible for people to get too focused on financial abundance, material abundance, um, and that could be a barrier to really experiencing other kinds of abundance, like you know
Yeah, but
more
that's
love
why,
or
yeah,
peace or
no,
health.
no question. And that's why you start with refining and doing your levels of self cultivation regarding spiritual balance.
Mhm.
You want to have your balance set so that when you step into these different fields of awareness and really power,
Mhm.
you're able to create the necessary perspective of how you're going to use that power
Mhm.
once you step out in the world.
One of the things that's happening, Professor Wayne, is a lot going on cosmically. So we're stepping into a period.
Yeah,
I think it's the eclipse of the moon. We're just so many things happening. Can you
no
speak
question.
to? Can you speak a little bit about what those relationships are, particularly as it as many of those things have tremendous prophetic meaning that we probably have lost track of.
Oh, yes, no question. I mean, this is really a profound time in terms of just transformation because this particular year, 2026, is like a launching pad that's going to move humanity into a totally different evolutionary frequency.
Mhm.
And for those, who have some type of a personal practice that's all about expansion, mind body expansion,
Mhm.
will reap the benefits of all of these different planetary alignments and the downloads that they're bringing, to the world. And then you're going to have those, because you're talking about timelines. And if you have a personal practice that's expansive and you're locking in, to the power and energy that these different planetary alignments are now bringing to the table, you will become aware that you're being moved onto a different timeline,
Mhm.
which means that the things that you're now looking at around you in the environment are taking place, but they're not having the kind of imprint and impact on you that they're having on everybody else.
Mhm.
And that's what you want. You want to be in that type of a place. So it's really a fusion of what's going on cosmologically in the heavens and then what you're doing, you know, personally with your own dedicated, you know, operations of expansion.
So you talk about like the expansion into this new timeline and kind of like this ascension. And so I feel like we've been in an age for like the last 2,000 years of the Father and the Son. And so I'm curious if you feel like this new ascension will be something that will connect more with the divine feminine.
Yeah, definitely. The thing which is really profound is, if I can, just kind of backtrack a little bit. I don't know if I talked about this in our last session or not, but just back in the day, the veil between student and master was very thin. So
Mhm.
we always had access to the masters that we were studying with or under.
Mhm.
And so this one was Satchidananda, Swami Satchidananda, and I worked with him for a number of years. And he was Alice Coltrane's first guru. And so he used to slip in to DC. This is when I lived in DC. I'm from DC. And so he would slip in and we'd all get together and sit and talk. And so he made a statement once, and he was saying that the greatest expression of energy in the universe was moksha.
Motion.
And moksha is freedom. And I said, oh, wow. He said, without freedom, there's nothing. And so I got into a conversation with a good friend of mine, also in DC during this time. And I put that on the table to her. She said, well, wait a minute. That's an interesting perspective, but I disagree with that. And I said, okay, well, what do you think is greater? And she said, love.
Mhm.
She said, love is the greatest of all energetic expressions. It's the glue that holds everything together. And then I thought, it hit me. And what came up was the dynamic between masculine and feminine energy. Because for the masculine, it's freedom. But for the feminine, it's love. And
Mhm.
so then the responsibility of the masculine is, how do you incorporate, how do you go into yourself, self cultivate, self refine, and create those levels of love activation
Mhm.
that exists within your own body mind?
Mhm.
How do you do that? Because that is our responsibility.
Mhm.
And because of the culture that we are a part of, that dynamic has been removed.
Mhm.
And it's been removed on multiple levels in a very negative, dark, and ingenious fashion. And that fashion is, they have been mindful and aware of the magnetic field for 150 years. They know that 4,000 years ago, the magnetic field was 4.0 Gauss. Now, you have to understand that magnetism integrates effortlessly and is one and the same with feminine energy. When you look at the corruptive and nefarious beatdown that has been put upon the female in various ways to stop her from projecting love, what has happened to the magnetic field of the planet, it has now reversed. Where it was 4.0 Gauss, it is now 0.4 Gauss, meaning that the magnetic field of the Earth has lost a little over 90% of its power. And this is because we live on a loveless planet. And those who are in power use this to manifest the levels of darkness that they put upon humanity with very little to no pushback. There's no resistance because there's no love.
That all sounds very profound, Professor Chandler, but I have to admit that I don't understand the connection between the magnetic field and the feminine energy, and I don't understand what you're saying when you say it's the magnetic fields change from 4.0 to point to point four. Okay, so could you kind of
The
like me
essence,
don't follow you? Can you explain that a little more?
yeah, the essence of feminine energy. Every
Hmm.
thing has, its essential factor,
Hmm.
and the essential factor of feminine energy is magnetism.
Okay.
Magnetism and feminine energy lock in with each other, one another,
Hmm.
and they're inseparable from each other. So that is magnetism is one of the major qualities of feminine force. And magnetism is a force that operates throughout the entire universe. So, what we use a lot of times when we do internal practices is a generation of the electromagnetic force.
Hmm.
So, you're familiar with electromagnetism.
Yes.
So, when you look at the dynamic of electromagnetism, you're looking at the integration of masculine energy, which is the electrodynamic, and magnetism, which is the feminine dynamic, but they work in unison with one another to create a level of wholeness and proper function that
Right.
brings balance
Right.
to the universe.
Well,
But when you
maybe
go ahead,
my misconception is that I don't see those as two things um, coming together. In my own conception of it, I see it as two sides of one thing. So it's
yeah, you can see you can have it as two sides of one thing,
mhm,
but one side is over here, one side is over there, and then they come together to create that level of wholeness
mhm.
and
Okay.
integration. Yeah. But they can definitely, yeah, they're two sides of the same coin, if you will.
Hmm.
So those, are the dynamics. Feminine energy is the basis for all of creation. As seen in what we refer to as the Vesica Pisces,
Hmm.
which is the interlocking circle, which are the two circles that come together that create wholeness.
Hmm.
So in Ancient Future, in my book, I talk about the Vesica Pisces and its expression with feminine energy. And I think I read this before, but if not, um, the Vesica Pisces, or these interlocking, interwoven circles, is the symbol for the creative feminine force that brought the material universe into being. It represents the fundamental energy which lies at the basis of all creation. This energy lies at the basis of all creation, and without it, nothing could be.
Hmm.
To remove this energy from all form and matter would bring about the immediate disintegration of the entire universe.
Certainly.
So, so when you talk about the responsibility and the function of feminine force and energy, the profundity is going to escape most
Right.
because it's that deep,
Right.
especially when you're operating and living within a patriarchal construct.
Right.
It's going to be very difficult to pull that level of awareness into the mind.
Mm-hmm. I suppose it has a lot to do with how you conceptualize it, because as you describe it, I'm thinking, well, you can't really remove it. You can't really remove the feminine uh, energy or the feminine contribution to the universe. You can ignore it, and you can not recognize that it exists and not recognize its contribution, but it's there. Yeah.
It's there, but in the case, and this takes us back to the beginning of your question and comment, which is the magnetic field, and
Mm-hmm.
how the magnetic field of planet Earth has withered from 4.0 Gauss all the way down to 0.4
Yeah, I don't know what that
Gauss.
means.
It's a unit of measurement.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. It's a
Astro-
unit.
Magnetic field has weakened.
It has substantially weakened. We've lost over 90%.
Sheesh. We can't hear you, Nana. You're on mute.
Linda's trying to say something.
Finger to work there. No, I was thinking a simple way to think about it might be the difference between love
Mm-hmm.
and the feminine energy and what's prevailing today. And I think people get that there's a lack of love,
Right.
but that feminine energy came with creation. Probably is not going anywhere anytime soon. In fact, we're moving into cosmic arena of its flourishing,
Mm-hmm.
despite what appears to be true.
Mhm.
But I think as someone who's very much immersed in feminine energy, I see it oftentimes with just the biology of masculine and feminine.
Mm-hmm.
The feminine way is internal.
Right.
So I go in and then express outward. The masculine energy is external.
That's very true.
They go, it's out and is encouraged to come in. So if we can just imagine what's going on in the world today, where the white male patriarchal energy is so defunct of any love, any compassion, any insight, any spiritual acumen. But what is going to balance it out, and ultimately what is going to cause it to dissipate, is the value and the magnetism
Mm-hmm.
of the love of that creative life force, which the feminine represents.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It
Yeah.
makes
Makes a lot of sense. And again, what happens is that now there is a really profound awareness, that takes place of the need for women to begin to really manifest that love dynamic, because that's operational. It creates the foundation and the overall infrastructure for our reality.
Hmm.
And without it, we're lost in the forest. And we've been lost in the forest,
Do we want to
for
question?
millennia.
Yeah, before we go, I wanted to honor a question I was asked earlier, asking if the practices are safe to do for people with physical illnesses. There we go. That's the question.
They're referring to the breathing exercises we were doing. So
Definitely the breathing exercise that we just did. And it's it's interesting. I had a client who came to me a couple of weeks ago to get energy work done, and most of the energy work that I do is remote. So as I go in, he was saying he was having all of this shooting pain that seemed to be coming from his abdomen and moving up into his head. And what I ended up doing was going in and being able to pinpoint exactly what was going on, the area that it was originating from, and I gave him a breathing exercise to do, which was alternate nostril and the movement of connecting the tongue and running that circuit of energy.
Mhm.
And it completely and totally removed the discomfort, which was really extreme for him. But in going in, I'm still telling him, nah, there's still something there, because I can feel the energy of it there. And you need to go to the doctor and get that really looked at, so you have a proper analysis, and diagnosis. So he did that. I got an email from him today, and he has, you know, uh, colonitis, and so because I told him that what I felt were pockets that have been formed in his transverse colon, and that's what was causing the issue. But the breath work allowed him to function on the daily, and not have the discomfort, the pain get in the way, and inhibit him. So yeah, you
We have
can you can work in a variety of different ways with different practices, even if you have a specific disorder or illness, and you just want to make sure that you're talking to somebody who can tell you which of those practices is going to suit that individual best.
I was gonna say, I know that we are at the top of the hour, but we didn't field as many questions last session, so I just wanted to make sure we might be able to get this next question off. It's related to the first question. How can we use these practices to help strengthen community relationships? So that was kind of more the individual, right, mind, body, spirit journey, but how can we use these practices to help strengthen community relationships?
Yeah. Let me community relationships. Okay. Um, when certain things, when you do specific things together, there is an energetic bond that is created that is more easily directed, defined, and again, once applied, intention is brought into play. Um, you're able to create much stronger levels of community because everybody's on the same page, or you have a group of individuals who are on the same page and are able to bring in other individuals of like awareness or consciousness. And that's where it all begins. It starts there. That's basically the springboard. But it has to begin with individuals, who want to come together and create that kind of community. That's what we've lost. I mean, when you stop and you look at the world, the one thing that the world lacks is real, authentic spiritual fabric.
Mhm.
There's no spiritual fabric in the world. And it's about us being motivated enough and taking the initiative to recreate that.
Mhm.
And we recreate that through dealing with the only way out is in. It's going in and refining and cultivating those elements that we naturally carry but never use. We never develop them.
Thank you so much. That is so powerful and so true. And that's what we try to do here on Creating Zola Mondays, really expand that consciousness so that we can go in and ultimately when we go on, what we want to find is that love. And then that love connects with the love in everyone else who's gone in. And that then allows for that common bond, the common commitment to emerge and us to go together and grow together and transform the universe. Thank you so much. We so look forward to you coming back on the third Monday to continue our conversation. And I hate that we're out of time, but we are. But thank you, audience, for joining. If we didn't get to your question, please hold it and we'll pick it up next time. Peace and
Definitely.
blessings.
All right, peace, family. We're going to end